Hi everyone, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's PF, and today we're going to be covering pretty much a classic. That's the Glenmorangie Original 10-year-old. That's right kids, it's pronounced Glenmorangie, not Glenmorangie. This dram itself is really widely available. It's a proper classic, especially on supermarkets in my area. You can get this in every supermarket, every off-licence, online, whatever. It's about £30 in the UK. Obviously, I guess that equates not quite nicely abroad. I'm not sure if you get it cheaper or more expensive. Would love to know for sure. Let me know in the comments below. But they're able to kind of churn this out because they're a really massive distillery. It's a Highland malt, so they're not like kind of in the Speyside region. They're a bit more northerly than that. But they have 6 wash stills and 6 spirit stills, and they're able to produce something like 6 million litres per year. So, you know, they're a mainstay, they're a big company. I'm sure if you're watching this, you've heard of these guys before. But, you know, if you're looking to research into entry-level drams, this is kind of what you're talking about. This is only a wee bottle of it, but you can get obviously full-size bottles. I just picked this up for review because I hadn't done it on the channel yet. I couldn't believe this was one of the ones I hadn't done. It's one of those ones you think that you have, but it's you lose track sometimes. It's a 40%er, but as we go into it, we'll see if that really makes a difference or not. It's also part of their kind of general release core range. Now, it's the only one that's in my supermarkets, but they also have things like the La Santa, which is sherry cask finish. This is ex-bourbon. They also have the Quinta Ruben and the Nectar d'Or, I think you pronounce it that way. Hopefully, I'll get those on the channel somewhat soonish. But let's go into the dram itself and kind of see where we're at with it, shall we? It's a very light colour. There's probably a little bit of caramel in it. It doesn't declare it on these labels. Unfortunately, in the UK, they don't have to declare it on the labels. They do in mainland Europe. If you buy bottles from France or Germany, it'll say whether it's got colouring on it. I wish we had that. Colouring is a whole other issue. I'm going to cover it on a dedicated video at some point in the future, I think, because I think we need to discuss it as a community. But for the sake of this, let's move on. I should also say as well, I haven't actually covered hardly any other Glenmorangies before. I've done one, which is my most expensive bottle I ever bought, and I covered it for the 1,000 subscriber celebration, and that was the Glenmorangie Atlanta. I'll put a link up here to that. But I did cover this particular dram on a live stream with the Whiskey Couch. It was a live food pairing, and we did that with mini pancakes, whipped cream, and some honey and orange sauce. It was really quite sublime. It's an hour-long video, but I definitely recommend you check that out. It was an absolute blast doing that with Gustav, and if you haven't seen it, I'll pop a link just up here as well. Let's get into the nosing of this and find out really what it's all about. Now, it's a really light flavoured whiskey. The stills they have, I mentioned earlier, they've got 12 of these things, but they're meant to be the tallest stills in Scotland, and they're about 8 metres tall. So if you know what a still looks like, in fact, I'll try and pop a picture up here of them. But they do that, but they're really thin and tall, and that's allegedly meant to give the kind of lighter notes. It requires more energy to send up the particles, the evaporation particles of alcohol up to the top. So the heavier ones, the ones that give kind of more tannins and more oils and things like that, they tend to come back down again and be redistilled or put into the next batch or whatever. So only the lighter ones make it. That's the theory. It holds a lot of water, not whiskey water, but it's very light. For me, it's a floral kind of note. It's honey. It's toffees almost, I guess. Some vanilla's in there as well. It's all ex-bourbon barrels, but it's first fill and refill, so you're getting a lot more flavour than if you just had refills. Let's go on to the palate. Now, initially on the tongue, it feels quite watery, but it makes way for this kind of amazing spicy flavour. More of that honey, bit more of that vanilla, some citrusy notes coming through as well. It's surprisingly complex. After that first initial split second, there's a lot more going on than you first think. even with that spiciness, that kind of lightness from the nose comes through, and it's really quite an easy drinking liquid. The finish is kind of medium-y, it finishes with a bit of a sweet and a kind of spicy note to it as well. For me, all around, it's a great dram. I think it gets tossed around as a bit of a starter dram, and then you kind of leave it alone, which is, I am guilty of that. You know, I drank this many years ago and haven't bought a bottle since, thinking that I'd kind of moved on from that. But recently I'm rediscovering my roots when it comes to whiskey, and although my tastes have changed somewhat now, and I find some of the stuff I started with not unpalatable, but I'm not a fan of it that much anymore. Stuff like this, stuff like the Glenfiddich 12, I treat them like palate resetters. You know, they keep me grounded. They stop me from wandering off into the heights of the aged statements, and it's just an all-round nice sipping whiskey that's very affordable. As I said earlier, about £30 for me, even cheaper if you buy one of these small bottles. So I think instead of thinking of it like a good starter whiskey, I would like to think of it as a good starter whiskey, yes, but also something that experts or connoisseurs or whatever you class yourself as these days, I think it's good to go back and try if you haven't tried it for a while, and kind of really ground yourself in where you probably started, something very similar to this.